If you fix this car, I'll marry you. The words hung in the air like smog. Arrogant, unfiltered, a heat-fueled joke from a man who thought the world bent around his sense of humor. The highway roared around them. Horns, wind, voices, but Sophia Daniels heard him clearly. She didn't laugh. She didn't even smile. She only stepped forward, looked into the open engine of the stalled Bentley, and said quietly, "Step back, sir." And he did. For once, Jacob Benjamin, billionaire, tech mogul, Lagos golden son, obeyed someone without thinking. He was running late for the biggest meeting of his quarter. A deal worth billions. A table full of European investors waiting for him in a tower of glass and gold. But in this moment, sweating beside a dead Bentley and a woman in a faded brown dress, time was suddenly elastic. Slower, strange, and somehow dangerous. It hadn't started this way. The day had cracked open with Lagos brightness, the kind that made concrete shimmer and air vibrate. The skyline looked photoshopped. The city buzzed with its usual orchestra, danfos barking for passengers, vendors chanting the prices of bottled water, tired songs bleeding from car radios. Jacob sat behind the wheel of his Bentley, calm and composed. Air conditioning perfect. Tie perfect. Timeline height. He glanced at his watch. 9:02 a.m. Plenty of time, if traffic stayed light. He had practiced his pitch 3 times. Knew the numbers. Knew what they wanted to hear. This was supposed to be a good day. Then the car sputtered. He frowned. Once. Twice. The dashboard blinked like it was trying to send a distress signal. "Come on," he muttered, pressing the start button. Silence. He pressed again. And again. Nothing. He called his driver. Voicemail. Called the mechanic. "Boss, I day come. Not small hold up for Lecky." "Forget Lecky," Jacob snapped. "The car is dead. Come now." But the line cut. "Network." He stepped out, opened the hood, stared into the engine like it was written in Greek. People stared. A few whispered. No one offered help. That's when he saw them. A woman and a girl walking along the roadside. Their clothes were modest. The woman held a black nylon bag to her chest like it held her last coin. The girl, no older than 14, clutched a loaf of bread like a rare prize. "Mom," the girl whispered, "is that a Bentley?" The woman didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on Jacob. She slowed as she walked past. Not curious. Not impressed. Just observant. Jacob gave a polite nod. "Morning." The woman nodded back. "Good morning, sir." And then the moment snapped. He looked at the engine again, his phone still buzzing with missed calls. Anger began to needle under his skin. This wasn't supposed to happen to men like him. Not today. He laughed, sharp and annoyed. "If you can fix this car," he said, mostly to himself, "I'll marry you. It's a bet." The girl gasped. "Mom." But the woman didn't flinch. She watched his face. "Are you serious?" she asked, without blinking. "Fix it and see." There was the smirk, the arrogance, the assumption that she couldn't, that it was all talk. But she didn't talk. She unzipped her bag. Inside, a small spanner, 2 screwdrivers, a bit of tape. Worn but clean. Well used. Loved. She looked at the Bentley like a familiar enemy. Rolled up her sleeves. "My name is Sophia," she said. "Please step back." Jacob blinked. He did. The next few minutes happened like a scene from a film. She leaned into the engine, fingers nimble and sure. Touched the battery terminal. Clicked her tongue. Tightened it. Rechecked the connector. She followed a loose wire like it was a path through a forest. Secured it with tape. Moved like someone who had fixed too many things in her life, and not just engines. She didn't guess. She knew. "Try it," she said, wiping her hands on her dress. Jacob slid into the car. Pressed the button. The Bentley purred awake like it had just returned from a vacation. He stared at the dashboard. He didn't speak. For the first time that morning, he felt something under his ribs. Not relief. Not triumph. Shame. She had done the impossible. Or maybe just the unexpected. He climbed out. Adjusted his suit. Avoided her eyes. "Thank you," he said barely. No mention of the bet. No apology. No offer of payment. He got back in. Hit the gas. The Bentley peeled away into traffic, back into the safety of wealth and power, leaving behind a woman and her daughter on the side of the road, in the heat, with grease on her hands and no ring on her finger. Jessica turned to her mother. Mom, he left. Sophia said nothing. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her old phone. Press play. Jacob's face. His voice. The words. If you fix this car, I'll marry you. It's a bet. She had it all. The police station was quiet and humid. A single fan spun slowly like it had given up. Sophia spoke without emotion. Calm. Direct. He made a public promise, and I fulfilled my part. The officers watched the video twice. Then again, they asked questions. She answered. Jessica sat beside her, hands in her lap, swinging her legs nervously. She didn't speak, not yet, but her eyes burned. Madam, the officer finally said, we'll invite him in. Sophia nodded. Thank you. She stood, took her daughter's hand, and walked out into the evening heat. The sky was beginning to soften, but her heart had hardened. She wasn't chasing a man. She was chasing respect. Meanwhile, on the 20th floor of his tower, Jacob was back in his kingdom. Confident, polished, back in control. His pitch had landed. Investors were pleased. And then the boardroom door opened. 2 uniformed men entered. Mr. Jacob Benjamin? Yes. You're needed at the station, sir. Silence spread like spilled wine. A pen froze in midair. Jacob's face twitched. What is this about? A complaint. A video. A promise. He stood slowly. Tried to smile. Failed. Let's make this quick. But the whispers had already started. The fall had begun. Outside the station, cameras waited like wolves. Inside, the smell of ink and old sweat filled the air. And there she was, Sophia Daniels, still in her old dress, still with her black bag on her lap, still steady. Jessica beside her, hands folded tightly. Jacob tried to speak. The officer raised a hand. Mr. Benjamin, did you say those words? Jacob looked at the screen, heard his own voice. If you fix this car, I'll marry you. It's a bet. The room felt small, the air too thick. He opened his mouth, then closed it. This was spiraling. It wasn't supposed to get this far. But the world had changed in the space of a joke. And now it was just beginning. The courtroom was full before the clock struck 9. Sweat trickled down the backs of necks. Whispers rustled like wind in dry leaves. Reporters positioned their cameras with the quiet precision of hunters. Even the security guards stood straighter than usual, sensing the importance of what was about to unfold. Not every day does a billionaire stand trial over a roadside promise. Jacob Benjamin entered like a man walking into an ambush. His suit was perfect, navy and tailored. His watch alone cost more than most people's annual salary. He wore sunglasses, though the courtroom was dim, as if they might shield him from judgment. But nothing could stop the stares. He had grown used to being watched, but not like this. Not with curiosity wrapped in judgment, and curiosity always cut sharper when wrapped in judgment. His lawyer leaned in as they Saturday, keep it simple. Let me do the talking. We'll argue intent. Jacob nodded without speaking. Across the room, Sophia sat like she belonged there. No lawyer, no jewelry, no makeup, just a brown dress, cleaned and pressed. The same black nylon bag on her lap. Her daughter, Jessica, sat beside her, upright, protective, proud. There was no fear in the girl's eyes, only fire. The court clerk stood. All rise. Justice Margaret entered, robes brushing the floor like whispers of thunder. She was elderly, with silver hair in a tight bun and glasses that made her look like she saw things others missed. Be seated, she said. The room obeyed. Case number 204, Sophia Daniels versus Jacob Benjamin. Jacob's jaw tightened. The name pairing alone irritated him. Madam Sophia, the judge began, please rise and state your account. Sophia stood. Her voice was steady. On Monday morning, my daughter and I were walking. We saw Mr. Benjamin beside his broken-down Bentley. He said, if you fix this car, I'll marry you. It's a bet. I asked if he was serious. He repeated it. She looked directly at the judge. I fixed the car. He drove away. No thank you. No mention of the promise. He left. You have proof? The judge asked. Sophia nodded and opened her bag. She handed her small, cracked phone to the bailiff, who connected it to the court monitor. The screen lit up. The courtroom watched as the video played. Jacob, standing beside the Bentley, arms folded, his voice clear. If you fix this car, I'll marry you. It's a bet. Then Sophia, working quietly under the hood. Jessica holding the loaf of bread, staring proudly. Then the engine coming to life. Then Jacob getting in and driving away without a word. The video ended. Silence. Even the air seemed unsure whether it could move. Justice Margaret leaned back. "Thank you, Madam Sophia. You may sit." Sophia returned to her seat. Jessica took her hand. "Mr. Benjamin," the judge said, "please rise." Jacob stood, smoothed his jacket. His lawyer rose beside him. "Your Honor," the lawyer began. "With all due respect, the defense argues this was a sarcastic remark made under duress." Mr. Benjamin's car had failed. He was late for an important meeting. His statement, while poorly worded, was not legally binding. It was a figure of speech. "Let me hear from Mr. Benjamin himself," the judge interrupted. Jacob cleared his throat. "It wasn't serious. I didn't think anyone would take it seriously. I was joking. Just venting." "Did she fix your car?" "Yes." "Did you say those exact words?" Yes, but did you clarify that it was a joke?" Jacob hesitated. "No." The judge stared at him for a long time. "Words have meaning, Mr. Benjamin, especially when spoken with conditions and witnesses. You issued a challenge. She completed it. Now we must consider the legal weight." His lawyer interjected. "Your Honor, surely we can't equate this to a contractual agreement." "Silence," she said, calm but firm. "This is not a comedy show. This is court." She turned to Jacob. "You stand here because your ego wrote a check your pride cannot cash. I am not here to judge your intentions. I am here to judge your actions." The room went completely still. "Mr. Benjamin," she continued, "this court finds you responsible for issuing a conditional public promise. You must choose. Fulfill that promise, or compensate the plaintiff with 200 million naira. Jacob blinked. The words echoed strangely in his head. Marry her, or pay. His lawyer leaned in, voice low. "You can't marry her. That's a PR disaster. Your board will panic. The markets will react. This is already a media frenzy." Jacob swallowed hard, looked across the room at Sophia. She met his eyes, not pleading, not angry, just waiting. Jessica held her hand like a lifeline. He looked down at the polished courtroom tiles. I can't marry someone I barely know," he said at last. "I choose the fine." Gasps erupted. Reporters scribbled wildly. Cameras clicked like gunfire. Jessica squeezed her mother's hand, tears forming, not of sadness, but of relief. Sophia's shoulders relaxed, but she didn't smile. She hadn't come for a ring. She had come to be heard. "Very well," the judge said. "You will pay Madam Sophia Daniels 200 million naira. In full, without delay, or your assets will be frozen." Jacob stood frozen. The number swam in his head like a fever. 200 million. For a sentence. The judge struck the gavel. Case closed. The courtroom exploded. People clapped. Some shook their heads. Others watched in awe. Sophia rose slowly. Jessica hugged her tight. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "You stood up to him. You won." Sophia didn't cry, but her eyes shimmered with something older than victory, dignity. Jacob left the courtroom like a man waking from a bad dream, his face pale, his mind spinning. Outside, reporters waited like wolves. "Sir, did you really lose 200 million over a roadside promise? Sir, any regrets? Sir, do you think she tricked you?" He didn't answer. He climbed into the car, closed the door. Inside the stillness, something hollow echoed in his chest. Not anger, not yet regret. Something closer to confusion. How had it come to this? And somewhere, in the back of his mind, a quiet question asked itself. What if I really had meant it? 200 million naira. It was just a number on a screen. A cold, blinking confirmation of what he'd lost, not in stocks or assets, but in something far more personal. Jacob Benjamin leaned back in his chair, staring at the words on his laptop. Transaction successful. That was it. A roadside joke, a careless dare, a flash of arrogance, and now this. He should have laughed. He usually did when the world didn't go his way. But today his mouth didn't know how to smile. The room was silent, except for the low hum of the city behind glass. Outside, Lagos traffic roared on, loud and indifferent. Inside, the only sound was the quiet rhythm of consequence. He had paid the fine. All of it. No negotiation. No discount. He hadn't even fought back. What would be the point? The video had gone viral. The courtroom clip, his voice saying, "If you fix this car, I'll marry you. It's a bet," was everywhere. Slowed down. Remixed. Turned into skits. Quoted in Instagram captions. Splashed across newspapers. Hashtag fix it and marry her trended across 3 continents. He was no longer just a businessman. He was a meme, a moral lesson, a reminder that words spoken with a smirk could echo louder than a speech delivered in Parliament. He hated it, but he hated more how calm she'd looked in court. Sophia Daniels, in her old brown dress, with that same nylon bag in her lap. She hadn't shouted, hadn't begged. She'd stood there with dignity and let the truth speak for itself. And now, she had his money. She had his silence. She had, in some small way, his name. And she wasn't even using it. She just disappeared. No interviews. No victory tour. No hashtags from her side. She had walked out of the courtroom with her daughter, holding her head high, and vanished. He searched for her once. Googled her name. Nothing. Then one day, something new popped up. Single mother launches export business after unusual legal settlement. There was a picture. Grainy, low resolution, but unmistakable. Sophia, in a modest office. Behind her, neatly stacked sacks of sesame. The caption read, "Sophia Gold Exports, rewriting her story." Jacob stared at the screen for a long time. Not because he was surprised she'd done something with the money, but because she hadn't mentioned him once. No interviews cashing in on his name. No headlines dragging him again. No viral retellings. She had simply moved forward. That cut deeper than the lawsuit. Sophia had not moved forward. She had sprinted. The money didn't change her. It woke her. She used half of it to travel across the north, meeting sesame farmers. Not in boardrooms, in fields. She took Jessica with her, teaching her how to read crop quality, how to negotiate with dusty traders who had never spoken to a woman in authority before. The other half went into storage, logistics, packaging, export documentation, and a small dusty warehouse that she scrubbed until the cement floor gleamed. She didn't hire fancy consultants. She didn't trust anyone in a suit. She trusted instinct, grit, and the simple fact that no one would fight for her dream if she didn't. 3 months in, Sophia Gold Exports shipped its first container. White sesame, bound for Germany. 6 months later, she opened a second warehouse. By the 1-year mark, she was the largest direct exporter of sesame in the country. People started asking questions. Who was she? Where did she come from? She never gave them the story they expected. When asked how she started, she only said, "I had help from the truth." Jessica, now 17, handled social media for the business. She filmed grainy videos of the warehouse, captured the hum of machines, the sacks being sealed and weighed, her mother giving calm instructions to a team of 12. Their TikTok account blew up, not because of editing, because of Sophia's face. Calm, strong, no filters. A woman who didn't chase wealth, just chased peace. They never mentioned Jacob. Never needed to. The world had its version. They were busy building something real. Jacob's world stayed wealthy, but less steady. He recovered from the PR storm. Investors came back. The board relaxed, but something in him didn't. He kept thinking about her, not with obsession, with something quieter, something like recognition. He had dismissed her, on that highway, in court, in his mind, but she had shown him what quiet power looked like. No noise, no revenge, just steady, unstoppable rise. He didn't try to reach her. What would he say? "Sorry I mocked you before you fixed my car and became more respected than I am?" So he watched from afar. And every time she made the news, when her company broke export records, when she spoke at Women in Agriculture panels, when her daughter won a National Science Award, he watched and wondered, who would he be now if he had just thanked her? 3 years passed. Jessica, now 20, walked across the graduation stage in a white pilot uniform. Cameras flashed. Applause thundered. Sophia sat in the front row, tears rolling down her cheeks. Not quietly, not hidden, proudly. That night, a letter arrived. Jessica had been selected for international flight training. Her first co-pilot session was scheduled on a commercial route, Abuja to Port Harcourt. Her only request, to have my mother in seat 1A. The day of the flight, Sophia wore a navy blue dress. No jewelry, no flair, just elegance. She still carried the old black nylon bag. It had been patched many times, but she refused to let it go. History should fly too, she said. As she stepped onto the plane, a few passengers recognized her. Someone whispered, "That's the woman." Sophia smiled gently, found her seat. Minutes later, the captain's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your pilot, Jessica Daniels. Today's flight is dedicated to the woman who gave me my wings, my mother." The cabin erupted in applause. Sophia wept openly. This time, not because of struggle, but because of how far silence had taken them. Jacob watched it all on the news that night. He was alone in his apartment, TV glowing. Jessica in uniform. Sophia smiling beside her. No bitterness, no lawsuits, just a daughter and a mother soaring. He turned off the screen, sat in the dark. No drink, no music, just memory. He could still hear his voice from that day. "If you fix this car, I'll marry you." And her voice. "Step back, sir." He didn't know what it was he felt. Regret, maybe. Respect, definitely. But also something else. Something unspoken. Like fate wasn't quite finished with them. 3 years had passed since that day in court, yet it lived in both their lives like a shadow under the skin. Never painful enough to scream, but never gone enough to forget. Sophia Daniels didn't speak of it anymore. Not to journalists, not to Jessica, not even to herself in those quiet moments before sleep when thoughts like to wander. She had moved on with the firm, methodical grace of someone who had no choice but to survive, and then chose to thrive. Jacob Benjamin had tried to do the same. But wealth repairs image, not memory. And some memories refused to fade. They didn't speak. Not once. Until the day they were booked at the same trade summit in Abuja. The glass hall shimmered with light. Delegates moved like chess pieces in tailored suits, exchanging cards, compliments, and carefully constructed opinions. Agriculture, logistics, tech trade. Everyone had a panel. Everyone had a pitch. Jacob stood at the side of the room, hands in his pockets, half listening to a French logistics executive explain supply chain innovations. He looked the same, charcoal suit, steel watch, confidence quiet now. Not dead, just evolved. He turned to get water, and saw her. She wasn't facing him yet. Sophia stood near an exhibit for climate-resilient crops, talking with a woman from Senegal. She was dressed in a flowing off-white blouse tucked into wide-legged black pants. No jewelry, no makeup, just presence. Hair pulled back. Calm. Serious. Present. Jacob froze. Not because of guilt, but because for the first time in 3 years, he saw her not as a memory or a headline or a woman he owed, but as someone real again. Alive. Here. She turned. Their eyes met. No drama. No music. No camera flash. Just quiet. Sophia blinked. Jacob stepped forward. He reached her like someone crossing a thin bridge, steady, but not certain what waited on the other side. "Madam Sophia," he said quietly. "Mr. Benjamin," she replied, just as calm. A pause. He looked at her face, trying to read it. Anger? Pity? Coldness? Nothing. She offered nothing but stillness. "You look well," he said. "I am." A second silence. "I've followed your company," Jacob added. "Gold exports. Dried hibiscus now. And soybeans," she said. "We opened a third warehouse last month." "That's impressive." She tilted her head. "People said the same about you once." He smiled, a bit lopsided. "I suppose they did." A small gust of air passed between them, as if carrying the weight of everything unspoken. "I don't want to interrupt your schedule," Jacob said. "But would you let me buy you coffee? Just coffee. No agenda." Sophia looked at him for a moment longer than was comfortable. Then she nodded. They didn't speak much while walking. The cafe inside the summit was busy but hushed, polished wood, glass walls, quiet jazz humming under conversation. They sat across from each other at a small round table. Jacob ordered an espresso. Sophia asked for water. The first sip stretched the silence thin. Then Jacob leaned forward. I wanted to say something to you for a long time. Sophia waited. I was a fool. She blinked slowly. I thought I was untouchable. Untouchable people speak without thinking. They dare without listening. And then they meet someone who shows them the ground again. She said nothing. I thought it was a joke. Then I thought it was a trap. Then it became something I couldn't laugh off. But what mattered more than all that was that you never chased me. You just did what needed to be done. Still no response. I think, Jacob said, that's what broke me the most. Sophia finally leaned back. Do you think I wanted to break you? No, he said. I think you never even needed to. They sat in silence again, this time less tense. I forgave you, she said finally. Jacob inhaled sharply. I forgave you before the judgment. The law was never about revenge. It was about being seen, being heard, for once. I see that now. She looked down at her glass. I didn't use the money for comfort, she said. I used it to build a wall between my daughter and the life I used to live. I know. They stayed like that, two people with no more debt between them. Only history, and something strange in the air. They met again a month later, this time in Lagos, then in Kano. Then, after a business roundtable, she called him to ask about a logistics firm he once invested in. Purely business. But the calls grew warmer, longer. Then came coffee without agenda. Dinner after long panels. Laughter that didn't sound rehearsed. Jacob had never dated slowly in his life. But this, whatever it was, didn't move fast. Sophia didn't lean into it. She let it exist, observed, and never once confused kindness for confession. But it grew anyway. Not loud, not flashy, real. Jessica noticed first. She had returned home from a training flight and found Sophia sitting on the balcony, phone in her lap, soft smile on her face. You like him, she said simply. Sophia didn't deny it. Jessica nodded, sat beside her. I used to hate him. Sophia looked at her. I didn't. Why not? Because what he did was foolish, not cruel. Cruelty leaves scars. Foolishness leaves lessons. Jessica thought about that. Has he learned? Sophia turned her head toward the stars. I think, she said, he's still learning. But he's no longer blind. When Jacob finally said the words, real words, no pressure, no grand gestures, it was on a quiet evening after dinner in Abuja. They had walked along the path behind the hotel. Palm trees swayed overhead. Streetlights hummed. He stopped, nervous for the first time in years. I don't want to fix what's already whole, he said. You've built your world. You don't need me. But if there's room, I like to stand beside it. Sophia turned toward him. No tears, no gasp, just her steady eyes. You once promised to marry me over a dead engine, she said. I remember. This time, she said, don't say it unless you mean it. I mean it, he said. She studied him like a blueprint. And then, slowly, she nodded. They didn't make a spectacle of it. The wedding was quiet. Jessica flew in from Cape Town to walk her mother down the aisle. Sophia wore ivory. Jacob wore gray. There were no speeches about fate, just a short vow, a long exhale, and a room full of people who had learned not to judge love by where it begins. The news arrived not with fireworks, not with drama, just a quiet call on a Sunday morning. Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you. Sophia sat by the window of their Lagos apartment, lights spilling across her tea, invoices on her lap. Jacob was nearby, flipping through the newspaper, half listening. I'm getting married, Jessica said. Sophia froze. Jacob lowered the paper. And just like that, the world shifted. Not because they were surprised, they had seen it coming. Jessica had been glowing for weeks, slipping into daydreams mid-conversation. But hearing her say it aloud still hit like the sun rising too fast. Sophia smiled first, slow and full. Jacob blinked a few times and finally muttered, To whom? His name was Nicholas, a quiet doctor with calm eyes, the kind that listen before they speak. He didn't arrive with arrogance. He arrived with banana bread, homemade, and a nervous smile. Sophia noticed the way he held Jessica's hand, like it was something he never wanted to break. Jacob noticed the way he greeted the gateman like an equal. They approved of him instantly. Not because he was perfect, but because Jessica's eyes said everything they needed to know. When she told them she wanted both of them to walk her down the aisle, Jacob hesitated. Just for a second. Both of us, he asked, eyebrows lifting. Jessica nodded. You gave me wings, Mom. And you, Dad, you gave me proof people can change. The wedding took place in Jos, under open sky and highland air. No marble halls, no grand chandelier, just a clearing surrounded by pine trees, a white arch draped in soft linen, and a long aisle of grass. Jessica wore a simple ivory dress with tiny silver beads stitched along the sleeves. Her smile was brighter than the sun. Nicholas stood at the altar, holding back tears before the ceremony even began. Sophia walked on one side of Jessica, steady and proud. Jacob walked on the other, suit perfectly pressed, every step heavier than the last. Guests whispered. Some remember the old story, the roadside bet, the courtroom spectacle, but no one spoke it aloud. It no longer mattered, because now, here they were, the woman, the man, and the girl who had once held bread like treasure. When they reached Nicholas, Jessica turned and looked at her parents. Thank you, she whispered, for being more than what the world expected. Sophia kissed her cheek. Jacob touched her hand with trembling fingers. Then they stepped aside and watched their daughter step into a future she had built with fire in her bones. That night, under paper lanterns and soft guitar music, Sophia and Jacob sat together beneath a mango tree. Jessica danced barefoot nearby, dress lifted just slightly, laughter echoing under the stars. Nicholas spun her gently, unable to stop staring at her. Jacob leaned back in his chair and exhaled. You remember when she rewired the fan in our old apartment? He asked. She was what, 11? 10, Sophia said. Took it apart like a scientist. Put it back together and made it faster. She told me that day, if I can fix this fan, maybe one day I'll fly a plane. And she did, Sophia said. They both fell silent. The kind of silence that feels like peace. Then Sophia added, sometimes I wonder if I hadn't pressed record that day. Jacob turned his head. You would have survived anyway. You're not the kind of woman life can keep down. She gave a soft smile. Maybe, but that day, I decided not to swallow silence. He nodded, eyes locked on Jessica, and I started learning how to listen. Over the next year, Sophia expanded her business. Sesame was just the beginning. She moved into hibiscus exports, then cashew, then morena. But she didn't just grow richer, she grew deeper. She launched a foundation called Wings Before Words, focused on training single mothers in trade and entrepreneurship. Quietly, without PR stunts, she changed hundreds of lives. Jacob, now semi-retired, became a guest lecturer at a business school in Abuja. His favorite class? The Cost of Arrogance. He told students how pride once cost him 200 million naira and led him to something more valuable. He always ended the lecture the same way. Sometimes, losing isn't the worst thing. Not changing is. Sophia attended one of his classes once. Sat at the back. Didn't say a word. Just smiled. They didn't remarry. They didn't call each other soulmates. They simply lived and slowly grew into each other again. Not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but out of quiet understanding. 3 years after the wedding, Jessica gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Hope. Hope had Sophia's sharp eyes, Jacob's stubborn chin, and a voice that could command a room before she could form full sentences. Sophia held her granddaughter like a glass sculpture, full of light, full of legacy. Jacob built her a tiny toy plane before she turned one. One afternoon, while Hope napped in a cot beside them, Jacob turned to Sophia. Do you ever miss the woman you were before all this? Sophia didn't answer right away. She watched Hope breathe, chest rising and falling like a whisper. No, she said softly. That woman was strong. But this one is free. Jacob nodded. And me? You, she said, turning to him. You became someone worth trusting. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, without looking at her, he said, I think I fell in love with you the day you told the court you weren't angry, just tired of being invisible. She reached over, touched his hand, and said nothing. Some truths didn't need words. Hope took her first steps in the living room. holding Sophia's finger and wobbling toward Jacob's open arms. When she landed in his lap, she burst into laughter. Jacob, the man who once mocked a roadside woman, let tears fall openly. He held his granddaughter close, kissed her tiny cheek, and whispered, "You don't know it yet, little one, but you come from giants." One day, the documentary filmmaker contacted Sophia. They wanted to tell her story. She declined the first 3 times. "I don't want pity," she said. "I want privacy." But eventually, she agreed. On one condition: no fairy tales, just truth. The film opened with grainy footage from that courtroom. Her brown dress, Jessica's wide eyes, Jacob's stunned silence. Then it faded into shots of sesame fields, factory floors, shipping containers, and the pilot's cabin of a jet mid-flight. It ended with Hope in Sophia's lap, flipping through a book titled How to Build a Rocket. The final voiceover was Sophia's. "We didn't rise to make headlines. We rose to give each other a future." The world changed. People still whispered about the case sometimes. About the CEO who got sued into manhood. About the mechanic with a toolbox and a backbone. But the jokes stopped. The memes faded. The respect remained. Because in the end, the story wasn't about courtrooms or contracts. It was about consequence. About character. About how the smallest choices, a sentence, a dare, a silence, can shape everything that follows. And about how, if you're lucky, and if you're willing, you get a second chance to be better, to love better, to raise better, to become someone your children can look at and say, "That's who I come from." What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.